Welcome to the Phenomenal Podcast, an authentic forum where real conversations happen. I'm your host, Phen, and each episode features an unscripted chat with everyday people. Get ready for a genuine, raw discussion. Enjoy the conversation. Hey friends, super exciting. Episode 16, and I have a longtime friend, Ryan Akin, with me today. Ryan, you've been all over the place in terms of what you do, what you're interested in, where you're working, and things like that. So I'm going to let you take it away, give a brief intro about yourself, how you know me, and where you're at in life, and things like that.
So like you said, my name is Ryan. Currently working for Delta Airlines as a flight attendant, which does take me all over the place. But before that, I met Stephen working in youth at Mount Bethel United Methodist, and met Stephen. I believe you were a sophomore in high school, and I was probably around a sophomore in college. So at the time, I felt old being around high schoolers, and now I'm like, that's not that much of a difference. But
Yeah, right?
um, so yeah, and it's just kind of been a crazy ride since then. My wife and I were living in Marietta right now, and so not too far from you guys, and
Mm,
just kind of doing our thing, traveling the world while we can, and taking
yeah.
advantage of that. So that's really all that's going on right now with me.
Yeah, that's really cool. I have been seeing places you've been. You go to Disney World a lot.
We do.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
we are big Disney people. We're those people that, until you like, if you see them on Instagram, you're like, that's kind of weird. And so
I
even
have
I
that
think that sometimes,
take.
and I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
I am kind of one of those people.
Yeah. And that's okay. I do think it's a little weird, but you guys enjoy it. And so I've
Everybody's got
actually
a
never
happy
been.
place, man.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I've never been. Maybe when we have kids, but I don't know. It's
That's fair.
so.
It's gotten a lot better for adults, is what I'll say. Which sounds weird when you say that, but I think it's like it's it's one of those places that obviously you have nostalgia from if you went as a kid, but then
Yeah.
going now, my wife and I just everybody's got a happy place, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's true. We our happy place seems to be St. Simon's. We go there a lot. Josie's dad
sure.
has a house there. Also, her mom does too, but they rent that one out. Her dad has a house that he doesn't rent out, so he like lives there half the year. So
Oh,
we
that's
just go
nice.
down there, go to the beach, hang out, get away from everything. It's really nice. So that's what I'd say our happy place is.
It's a good getaway spot.
Absolutely. Not too far away, but where else have you been this summer? You before we started recording, you said you've been really busy. And so,
Yeah, I mean, just kind of. So I just got back from a beach trip myself with the
yep.
family. We were down in
Nice.
Navarre, Florida, which was
Hmm.
nice and relaxed. It's about 30 minutes outside Destin.
Okay.
Summer. My wife's a teacher, so we kind of
Yep.
take the summer to travel as much as we can, do as much as we can. We did a cruise for our anniversary back in June,
Yep.
and went through the West Caribbean area, and it was a lot of fun. And so it just kind of yeah, we were in Scotland back in April for her spring break. So yeah, we definitely
Oh,
spent the past few months kind of going all over the place. My
yeah.
dog's tail is in
I
the. What's up, bud? You want to say hi?
That was funny. Scotland, that's definitely a high place on my list. How did you enjoy that?
Oh, loved it, loved it.
Yeah.
Um, we actually met a couple friends
Mm,
through Disney. Met them in Disney,
mm,
and it was kind of random, and we started talking, and over time realized, oh, my AirPod fell up. Over time, just the idea that, oh, like, we have free flights, they got a free place to stay, we're like, let's go spend spring break up in Scotland, and they took us all over, and it was pretty incredible, honestly. I mean, it was a
yeah.
good mix of nature and mountains and highlands, and seeing everything
Yeah.
that you would envision Scotland being, but then
Right.
also the towns itself were very very Scottish weather, like, that
Yeah.
it's,
Okay.
cold, kind of dreary, but
Yeah.
like Edinburgh, so much history.
Yeah.
If you like Harry Potter, got a lot of Harry Potter sites over there, which we saw,
Oh
which
yeah.
was cool. So, but yeah, we loved it, man. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Did you find the Loch Ness monster?
No, we didn't find the Loch Ness Monster. We actually
Mm.
didn't get up that far north. We were down more in the Glasgow, Edinburgh
Okay.
area, and that we
Yeah.
learned that that was like, I don't even know what it was, like a 5 hour drive up north, and we're like, maybe next time. So,
Mm. Mm. Yeah. So working for Delta, you said you get free flights. Like, is that for you and your wife? You.
Yeah. So basically, the perks are you get one person per employee, I guess, that you can choose for a year.
Mm,
Um, and I just happened to start working at Delta about the same year that I met my wife, and so she ended up being the lucky recipient of that. It was supposed to be before COVID hit. Our friend Marcus,
yeah.
um, and he's still upset with me that he didn't get that initial year's perks thanks to COVID.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, so it's so her and then my parents also get free flights through it, which
Oh,
is
that's
nice.
cool.
It
That
is
is
cool.
cool.
So yeah,
Do
which my
you
dad
have to?
obviously. Oh, go
Oh
ahead.
yeah. I was gonna say, do you have to be on the flight with them, or they can just use it whenever, like standby,
No,
or?
no, they can use it whenever. It is standby.
Mm,
So my dad's used it before. Obviously, he runs a nonprofit ministry himself,
hmm.
um, Global Servant Leaders, and he flies all over doing that. But sometimes he has to pay for tickets as well because standby can be a risky gamble when you got to get
Right.
somewhere. So
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
For sure. You know what? I should ask your dad if he wants to be on because that'd be a cool conversation to talk about all the
he'd
things
love
he's
it.
doing. Yeah, across the
He's always
world.
down to talk. So
Oh yeah, he is. Your Ryan's dad actually officiated my wedding, so that's
he officiated ours too. So
look at that.
yeah,
Look
I know.
what fun facts. Cool. I actually saw a job posting for a software engineer at Delta, and
Oh, did you really?
I thought about applying, but I'm in such a good place with my current job that I was
I
like,
get
yeah,
that.
it's not completely worth because it had in the perks like you get your buddy pass or whatever for
Sure. Yeah.
flying. So that would be pretty cool. But
If you ever need a recommendation, let me know. I'll
yeah,
write my name
yeah,
down for you. I'll
there you
vouch.
go. Yeah, I'm in a good place, but if things ever change, I might take you up on that. All
Yeah,
right.
as long as we can make it through all the mess that's going on right now too.
Yeah, I
So
actually wanted to ask you about where were you supposed to work when all that happened over the weekend with the Crowdstrike
thankfully
issues?
no,
Okay.
because I was on vacation. Um, so I woke up at the beach to a bunch of emails and texts from Delta
Yeah.
basically begging for people to help. Understandably so. It was a little bit of a
Hmm.
mess, and they're trying to recover as quickly as they can. I was at the beach, so I didn't
Right.
have that option to to come in. But yeah, it's been a mess. I'm still getting emails and texts every day, and flight attendants are lost in the system.
Oh
what was supposed
man.
to be like a 1 day trip, and it's turned into 4 days, and they can't get home. There's no pilots. It's all those things that you're seeing on social media and a little more, I think.
Yeah, because I'm sure that the social media is just the tip of the iceberg, but like, I mean, the whole thing is absolutely insane, and all these airlines that were affected, and other companies too, but I think airlines are like one of the front and center. The amount of money that's being lost because of this issue
Yeah.
is insane.
hmm Yeah, I did the math just like rudimentary on the number of flights they told us were being canceled, and just if you averaged what is that $150, which is cheap for Delta probably per
Mm-hmm.
ticket for a 200-seat flight, and how many of those cancellations in terms of
Yeah,
overall flights just for Delta is it's kind of ridiculous how much money they're losing right now. But
right.
uh, yeah, I think with everything going on with CrowdStrike, I'm curious if there's going to be some legal action down the road.
Yeah,
Obviously, I haven't heard anything one way or another on
right.
that, but uh, it would be interesting considering how much of a mess this is made. And I'm hoping that maybe in the future we'll be able to be more prepared for something like this, have a backup system that's able to uh,
Yeah.
get us through it quicker because it's seemingly taking Delta just a little bit longer than maybe normal. But yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know the inner workings of everything they're trying to deal with in terms of getting CrowdStrike to get their systems back up and all that, but it's definitely been a mess.
It has been a mess for sure. I'm also curious, like what the resolution is going to be down the road.
Yeah,
wonder how big that like lawsuit, maybe class action type thing is going to be for
yeah,
these companies that have lost out on so much money. And then just like people's time, like my friend, he was booking a flight with American for work. He was trying
hmm
to fly somewhere, and he said he's been on hold with American Airlines for over 5 hours now because he's
yeah,
trying to he messed something up and his flight or his payment didn't go through, and he had to call for some reason. So now he's on hold for a ridiculous amount of time.
Well, and it's good, I guess, not good, but it's interesting to hear that it's been happening at other airlines as well, because
Hmm.
I know people are like, I saw the Secretary of Transportation put out a tweet about specifically Delta the other day, and
Oh, really?
um, he did, and so I was like, well, is it not as bad at other places? Obviously, I'm not, aware of how it's going over there, so it's interesting to hear that it's not just us, but obviously, I know we've been affected pretty heavily. Can't
Yeah.
speak for the company, of course, since this is
Right.
going out. But but personal opinion, it's definitely interesting to see, you know, how much of a mess has been made simply by systems shutting down for a short period of time,
Right.
and then not being able to specifically, I think the crew tracking system's the thing that's been tough for them to get back up, and just trying to find where everybody is. So
That's insane. And it really stinks because this ultimately isn't Delta's fault or any of the companies who were affected.
yeah,
There is no, I guess, like you said, maybe a backup system or something like that. But still, like, this is insane and it's unheard of.
yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, I think you can argue, you hear all these comments about, okay, maybe the IT systems weren't as updated as they should be, or, I don't know
mhm,
personally
yeah,
exactly, how long it's been since they've updated what was necessary or not. But obviously, the original problem itself, it does stink because the airlines are getting a whole lot of backlash for things that they originally didn't cause.
yeah,
And so
right.
you feel for the company in some regard, despite the fact that it's stressful for the employees. And I think there's probably a
Hmm.
lot of flight attendants right now that are feeling like the company doesn't have their back in some ways, just because
Sure.
of being on the road, and not, knowing when they're going to be able to come home, not sure when they're getting pilots or anything like that. I think it's slowly started to get back on track.
Yeah.
But obviously, the problem itself wasn't Deltas or Americans or Uniteds or any,
Yeah.
it was Crowdstrike for whatever reason. And that's going to be interesting to see the result down the road once everybody's able to recover and kind of take a breath from it.
For sure. Are flights back working? Like, are people flying again? Or I haven't
They
been paying
are,
too much
yeah. I mean,
attention.
I know they are. I actually have to go to work tomorrow, so it'll be my
Okay.
first trip back from vacation, and I'm going to be really interested to see
Yeah.
what is going on. I'm hopeful that because my trip has just kind of been set already, I'm not like picking up a trip that's been scrambled together to try and recover things. That maybe it'll be smooth for me, but the way things have been going, it's kind of just jumping into the deep end and seeing where you land.
Yeah. Uh, oh, man. You guys, as flight attendants, and probably not pilots as much because the pilots can kind of hide a little bit more, but like, I know you guys get the brunt of so much stuff from disgruntled passengers, but ultimately none of it's your fault. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think the thing that made me want to go into this job in the first place was, one, probably uh, feeling like it was time to get away from ministry for a little bit and take a
mhm,
break from that avenue of work, and then kind of starting a different adventure that would allow me to travel more, to experience more, and it's obviously Delta's a good company overall, and
mhm,
gives it's a good job with good perks, and so it's one of those things where you go, I think when you first tell people, there's probably a little bit of a stereotype with that, and maybe people are going, "Oh, interesting." They don't
mhm.
really understand what all goes into that. But I knew I worked with people when I was in ministry, and I knew I could
Yeah.
work with people here. And it is, very similar in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's not just church people in this instance, and so you're
Yeah.
dealing with a lot of different personalities all the time, and it's not just a few personalities. It's 200 at a time, maybe
Right.
three or four times a day, and so combine that with, also, you're getting a new crew every time you go out, so you don't always know the
Mhm.
people you're working with, and new pilots you're having to interact with. So it's definitely a constant change of, having to interact with people and kind of reorganize yourself to go, okay, how do I handle this situation? How do I talk to this person? How do I, if,
Mhm.
especially in a situation like this, I know there's going to be some frustrated people. Even if my flights are okay, there's still going to be people who are probably affected
Yeah.
on my flights.
Right.
And so you definitely kind of have to prepare for, okay, I can't let my emotions be too high or too low in these types of situations, because
Yeah.
otherwise you'll just be a mess the entire time.
Absolutely. And it's crazy because like travel is just stressful in general for people. Like,
Yeah.
it can be exciting and everything, but it's still at the same time, like going to the airport is a stressful thing. And so then you add all of this other stuff on top of it.
Always.
And goodness.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely see people that it's like, oh, it's their first time flying and they're 35 years old. And I'm like, how is this
Yeah.
your first time? And I'm like, I can't imagine how stressful that is when
Right.
you're like, I've never been here and I don't know what I'm doing or what this plane is about to do or what noises I'm supposed to hear. And it's, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are just so unaware of what's going on, even if it's not their first time flying, especially in
Hmm.
Atlanta. I mean, I actually think Atlanta's the airport itself is fairly well organized, but it is
Yeah.
obviously always busy, and
And it's really
and that
big.
creates stress. It's super big. Yeah, I
It's
mean,
really big.
I guess it has to be to account for the
Yeah.
traffic that comes through it, but
Right.
it's definitely, yeah, it creates a lot of stress if you're not entirely sure of what you're doing, or if you're trying to
Yeah.
rush through things because you showed up too late or something along
Right.
those lines, which
Right.
happens a lot.
That's funny. I remember the first time I traveled internationally by myself. I can't remember the first time I traveled just on a plane by myself, but internationally I
Yeah.
remember specifically because I was going to Belize for the summer and I
Okay.
flew United. I think it was the cheapest flight, and I was a college
Sure.
kid, so I couldn't afford anything.
Whatever's cheapest,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. So, and I had a layover in Houston, and I was like, I had been through the Atlanta airport a bunch of times, so I felt pretty comfortable doing that one. But then, like, having a layover by myself and then arriving in a
Yep.
third world country on my own, I was pretty overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think definitely. I don't. I mean, personally, I don't like flying by myself. Still,
Yeah,
I have a crew that I'm going to hotels with and things like that. Even
sure.
if you don't know people, but I'm not like a solo adventurer. Usually, if I'm going
Yeah,
anywhere for fun, then hopefully, hope my wife is coming with me.
right.
So it's definitely traveling by yourself, especially through plane, is not the most fun in my
Hmm.
opinion, just because there's so many variables that you're always having to be the one person that's looking out for and
Yeah,
going,
right.
all right, if you're showing up in Belize, for instance, you're going, okay, how am I getting transportation to where I'm
Right.
going? And okay, do I know the people that I'm going to see? It's
Right.
just, it's
Yeah.
always, a lot of questions.
A lot of questions, but it ended up being a good summer. And but travel is
What
so
year was
much
that?
fun.
When did
That
you do
was
that?
the year after my freshman year of college. I was
Oh, okay.
2015. Yeah, 2015.
So I was still in Mount Bethel at the time. Okay.
Yeah, I spent 6 weeks down there, and it was pretty cool. Pretty fun. Had
Okay.
a Yeah, got to and
Were you
like the
down with any specific organization? I can't
yeah,
remember.
I was with Praying Pelican. Um,
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yep. So I was like an intern basically for it, and
Was that with Josh?
Josh was there for. I was with
Nice.
him. He was running. Yeah, he was running the missionaries down because he still lived down there at the time.
Okay.
So he was running the trips for everyone and stuff like that. So I got to spend a week with him, and then I had 5 other trips I was a part of, week long trips, and then I had a one week
Okay.
off, but we were still down there. So it
Okay.
was cool being
That's
able to
awesome. I
go.
forgot that happened. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was awesome, and being able to go around the whole country. I got to see like different parts
Yeah.
of the country instead of whenever we would go for a week with the church. You just went to
Yep.
one place,
Yeah,
and
you
then
do the week long, mission trips and you're basically just with one church the whole week, which is
yeah,
great because if you tried to travel during a week, you'd never actually make a relationship with anybody,
yeah,
but
it's true.
it you do kind of feel contained on those, you know, 5 day trips. You're like, all right,
Yeah,
it's time to go back home and we haven't got out of this 5 mile radius right
yeah, right.
here. So,
Yeah, but it was cool. It's good. It's so funny how many times we talk about travel, like with all the people on the podcasts that I've
yeah,
interviewed. It's just because like it's so much fun. It's
it is.
stressful, but it is fun seeing new places.
Well, and I think it's kind of, I don't know whether it's Instagram, TikTok, that kind of thing. But it's definitely
Mhm.
becoming a more popular avenue where I hear people talk all the time about how older generations didn't just get up and go fly
Yeah.
places. There was more of probably a conscious effort to save for whatever the future held, whether it's house,
Hmm.
kids, anything like that. Whereas I think our generation is probably a little more, I don't know if adventure focused is the right phrase for it, but just, kind of, I'm going to not worry about so much in the future as I am about what can I explore today and what are my experiences right now. And I think that's definitely a change that I've noticed. And obviously in
Yeah.
my job, you see that all the time where you see a lot of people our age that are just, will be international travelers all the time, and I don't think you ever would have seen that beforehand.
Right.
Um, so it's like my parents talk all the time about how like for our 1 year anniversary last year, Hope and I went to Paris for a week.
Hmm.
That was never a thing. Nobody was like, we should go to Paris. It was like they went to Gatlinburg or something
Yeah.
like that,
Right. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was, and so it's definitely become more popular, but for good reason, because I think people see those opportunities, and there's, why wouldn't you want to get to experience more if you have that opportunity rather than just kind of sit inside your own little bubble?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's something a really good and I think cool realization that Josie and I have come to recently is that the world isn't as dangerous as the mainstream media likes to portray it to be.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, going out of the country to a third world country or anything like that, people are always like, oh, be careful, be safe. Like, Americans get
Hmm.
kidnapped and things like that. And like, sure, if that happens, but like the statistics are like so low. I probably have a greater chance of getting shot in downtown Atlanta
Yeah.
than something happening to me in a different part of the world.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
mean, I some of the most loving people I've ever met have been in countries that you would qualify as, whether it's third world or
yeah.
impoverished or whatever it is. I think
Hmm.
uh, it's definitely. I've always told people that, while I understand the issues that some people may have with a week long mission trip, or just kind of Christian tourism that some people would call
Yeah,
it, I
sure.
always have told people that get out while you can. If you have an opportunity to see parts of the world that you haven't before, do it. If for no other reason that you individually allows you to grow so much more, just because it kind of broadens your horizons on what the world is, on who
Hmm.
people are, on
Hmm.
how to interact with people that are so much different with you. And I think once you do that,
Hmm.
it's hard to then come back home and have the same types of stereotypes or
Hmm.
prejudices maybe that you've had in the past.
Hmm.
And most of those are things you don't even realize you're carrying until you have to go to another country, interact with a different group of people, and
Yeah.
come back and be like, oh, I probably didn't see things the way I should have for a while,
Right.
and that's not even political. I think that's just like person to person. How am I
Yeah.
like living, and how do I see the world around me? Is it's huge to be able to have those, especially early, I think, in your life if you can.
Yeah. I hope that once we have kids and everything, like we get them traveled and things like it'll be stressful for us, but it'll be so good for
Sure.
them and their development as
Hmm.
people. Because going that was the best part about the mission trips that I got to go on since I was a freshman in high school. We went to the Bahamas and
Yeah.
then uh, I've been to Costa Rica and Belize, all because I've been able to travel with a church. But it really opened my
Sure.
eyes to like what the world is.
Yes.
You know, and even going down to doing a lot of the homeless ministry in Atlanta and
Sure.
seeing that, which going back to the point about being dangerous, things being dangerous, traveling being
Yeah.
dangerous, that's
Hmm.
probably more dangerous than going on those like week-long trips out of the
Depending
country.
on where you are and what time of day you're going, yeah, it probably
Yeah,
it could be
yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I remember one time we were down doing homeless ministry in Atlanta, and there was a shooting a street over, and we had to
Hmm.
like pack up and get back and like leave immediately. Uh,
Yeah.
so like,
Weirdly, they don't care that a youth group's right across the road or
right,
something like
right,
that. They
right.
didn't be like, hang on, guys, let's stop for a
Yeah.
minute. Yeah.
Did you not see all those white kids down the street? Like, we
Yeah.
should probably.
Because that's what calms everybody down, is large groups of white kids.
Yeah, right. um, but I mean, travel's so cool. It's fun to talk about too.
Yeah, I mean, I think just being able to, like you said, having those, be able to break down walls, being able to break down your kind of own vision on how the world works.
Hmm.
That's exactly what I think people would probably need to do more of, because we're more kind of divided and set in our ways now, than at least in my lifetime I've ever seen. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like, whether it's politics or any type of major issue that people talk about, it's almost become sports like, where hey, I'm a Georgia fan. No, I'm an Auburn fan. I'm a
Yeah,
Florida fan. And it's
yeah.
like, this isn't football, but that's how we treat a lot of things. And I think it's only by getting outside of that, whether it's through travel or just going to places
Hmm.
locally that you don't normally go to interact with people. That's really what forces you to kind of have to think about things in a different way. And whether you change your mind on that opinion or not really isn't the point. It's more just let me see people for people. And I
Yeah,
think that's really what it allows you to do.
that's huge. And like the world, I think it's a lot to do with social media, is
Hmm.
how connected, quote unquote, we are
Yes.
now. But like no one actually connects personally anymore.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this with someone. It might have been Josie. I think it was Josie and some other people that like or I was talking to my mom about how she's like, oh, I know this and this about our neighbors, and I was like, oh, that's crazy. I literally don't know anything about either one of my next door neighbors. Like,
Yeah.
and it's just, and I mean, a lot of that's my fault, but like at the same time, like, do I really need to? Probably. I don't know. Like,
It is weird. It's
yeah,
definitely we know a few of our neighbors, but we've been in this spot for a little over 2 years now, and you'll have people across the street that I don't even know if I could tell you what they look like, to be honest with you,
right.
just because
Yeah,
when people are coming and going, and you're like, I think they may have driven that car, and I don't know what spot they parked in, but
right.
I couldn't tell you exactly where they live or not, and so it's very weird that
Yeah,
yeah, we kind of go through life nowadays, unless you're forced to interact through work or school or whatever it may be, that you're not likely to just go and talk to people. Whereas, I know it was this way for me, and I think it was for you that like
hmm,
when you're growing up, like you were just going to go play with the kids in your neighborhood.
yeah,
You just walk around all the time, and it would have been weird if you didn't know your neighbors.
right,
People would have been like, "Oh, who are those people that don't talk to anybody?"
right.
It's like nowadays, it's who are those people that are trying to talk to everyone. So,
Yeah. Actually, I was just thinking about that because, like, in my neighborhood, we we walk our dog. I walk my dog 2 or 3 times a day. Like, and
yeah.
it's from my house to the end of the street and back. It's a mile, so it's perfect. We'll just like
Hmm.
go down there, come back, and like I'm probably to my neighbors. I don't wear a shirt a lot of time when I walk the dog, especially in the summer. And
Sure, it's hot.
I'm probably just that like weird young guy that doesn't wear a shirt, and like everyone knows who I am because I'm always outside
Uh-huh.
walking the dog. But then there's other people, and I will see them, and I'll be like, I don't think I've ever seen you before. Like, have you
Yeah.
ever opened your door, like walked outside, or the only thing they do is just get in their car inside their garage and leave their house. And
Yeah, exactly. We actually had there was a couple around Hope and I's age that just moved in, I
mhm,
think like 2 weeks ago. And right before they moved in, I don't know, I guess they saw our cars were in our specific spot, so they knew we were home. But they came and knocked on our door and were just like, hey, we're thinking about moving into this area and we're just curious what other people thought about it before we assigned everything officially. And they were really nice, and it's awesome
yeah,
they're living here. We've seen them a couple of times since. Um, but at the time, I remember closing the door going, what the heck? That was so weird.
that
Why'd they
was
just come
so
knock on our
weird.
door? It's like, who just knocks on people's doors? And that's
Right.
how things are.
That was
It
so
was so
normal
unusual.
before.
Yeah, I
Like,
know. It's and until this conversation, I don't think I realized like that probably shouldn't be weird. Like I probably
right.
should have been more okay with that than I was. But now it's not the norm. So
Yeah. One time I answered the door when someone knocked on it, and Josie was like, "Why'd you answer the door?" I was like, "Why? Why not?" Like, you know. But like that's just the mindset that we've all shifted into. Is like, if you're not delivering a package to me, why are you knocking on my door? Like,
yeah, there is that weird moment whenever you get a knock on the door where you're like, should we see who it is, or
right?
do we just stay here?
Do we just
Do we
act
avoid
like
them? Or,
no one's home,
yeah,
even though the
because I don't.
TV's on?
Yeah, TVs are on, lights are on, everybody can, you got music somewhere, and it's like we're obviously home, but we're just not gonna. I don't know. I think it's funny how you do have that moment of, yeah, it's not like you need to be afraid of anything per se, but it is that weird like moment in between answering the door and hearing the knock where you're like, I don't think I should do this.
Right.
It's just like, I don't know where that conditioning has come from, but it is weird.
It's strange because I remember growing up, we would run around our neighborhood, and I would just run up to my friend's house and knock on their
Yeah,
door, and like if they weren't home, I would still do it, and I'd talk to their parents, and like I don't
yeah.
know what kids do now. They probably text each other because kids have phones from the time that they can like
I
think.
guess that's true. You can kind of figure
But
out if someone's home before you go
yeah,
over there. But yeah, I mean, I had friends that say I was in the shower or something like that. They would just walk in and just like be
yeah,
hanging out in my bedroom playing video games or something like that by the time I got out. And just like that's just how things were. But nowadays, you definitely don't leave your door unlocked like that. So
right. And I mean, and I think it's so strange. Like, why can't I leave my door unlocked or my garage door open if I
I
like
know.
walk the dog? And I don't know when this shift happened. This is I didn't expect this from our conversation, but I'm really thinking now. It's like, when did this shift happen from when like you can still trust your neighbors?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too because I don't know. Maybe it's like you said, there is more of a technology aspect to it where you're able to be at home and be entertained more than you are have the desire to go out and be with people. I think it's much
Hmm.
easier just to kind of remain solo or with your wife or whoever it is in your own house. Because I think even beyond just meeting your neighbors, I think it's so much harder to make plans with people nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Where, Hope and I will talk about this, where it's like, we have a lot of friends and it's always fun when you get together, but there is that feeling of, okay, how long are we going to be with these people, and
Hmm.
what are we doing, and who else is going to be there,
Hmm.
and how are you feeling, are you too tired to do this, and like and
Yeah.
it's just like everybody's got these like stipulations in their head before they go even see people nowadays that are already their friends, it's not even strangers.
Right.
And it's definitely a weird mentality where it's just so much. I don't know if it's safer, but it's definitely easier just to, hey, let's just be here and throw on another episode of Friends or something like that. Whatever,
Mm.
some show, movie, anything like that, or I'll watch YouTube or play a video game, and it's like it's
Hmm.
just so much easier to do that than it is to be like, let me make an effort to go spend time with people, even people
Yeah.
I know well.
Right. Yeah. I totally understand. And someone asked me last week. They said on Thursday night, I texted him and I actually asked if he wanted to do a podcast, and then he asked maybe he said maybe and asked about it, and then like then he said, "Hey, do you want to go to the Braves game tomorrow?" And my first thought was, "Oh, that sounds
Uh-huh.
fun. That sounds great." My
Sure.
second thought was, "But I go to bed at 9 o'clock now. Do I really
Yep.
want to? Do I really want to go do that?" Like,
It's
honest,
like I got work in the morning. Do I need to?
yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
exactly.
was a Friday night. I was going to
Oh,
the.
so it
It
wasn't
was a
even.
yeah. I was just like, man, my bedtime's 9:30. Like I get up pretty early now. Do I really want to go to the Braves game?
Yeah.
And it's just so funny that like that's the where I feel like all of us have kind of shifted to. Um,
But I think even like your friend's original answer of maybe, that's like
yeah,
everybody hedges their bets now. Like, hey, do
right,
you want to do this? We'll see. You wait till
right,
like the last possible moment to
right,
give an answer.
yeah,
I've done that myself so many times where somebody will ask something and I'm like, I don't really know who else is going to be there, and I don't know what I'm
right,
committing to.
right,
It's just, and you're like, I don't know. I shouldn't give an answer now because I don't want to have to say no. So I'll be like, yeah, possibly. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
text me again later.
yeah. We'll see. And it's funny. Like I've noticed recently, for myself at least, there's certain people I hang out with, and I get so much energy from, and it's like it doesn't even have to be people I know. It's like I could be in a group with some people, and they're just awesome, and I get a ton of energy
Yeah,
from them. And then there's that other group of people, and their energy is just like so like negative
sure.
and dark, and then it's just like,
Yeah,
man, you just like really killed the whole vibe.
yeah.
And that's kind of what I think about now when I'm like going into situations like I don't know who's gonna be there. So like,
Hmm.
do I really want to spend my time that is so valuable possibly being with people who don't bring out the
Yeah.
best in me? Uh,
Yeah, that's definitely, I think everybody has that kind of list in their head of like the people who are automatic yeses for the
right,
most part,
right.
um, within reason. But I think like there are people in my head that spring to mind immediately where I'm like, yeah, no, if they are in town and want to do something or want to grab
Hmm.
dinner, most of the time my answer is going to be yes, because like you said, they give energy and they give
Hmm.
joy and they make it so that you feel like you're able to be comfortable in yourself while you're with them. And then there's people where you know them, you're probably close with them. It's not
Hmm.
like they're a stranger by any means, but they're not necessarily giving you anything in that relationship. And by that, I don't mean like obviously physical things. I just mean,
Yeah.
whether it's energy or some kind of positive emotion, or you're just not really sure. Um, and it's not, I don't know what it exactly is. The chemistry in our brains is interesting how that works because I think it's not always the people who are just like the most hyper and positive that always make you feel that kind of comfortable sense
Hmm.
of being able to just be with somebody. But there is something whether that connects to your own personality that you're always weighing, going, yeah, it's just really easy. It's really easy to talk to them. It's really easy
Hmm.
to be around them. And obviously, you look for that in like a romantic relationship, but even within friendships,
Yeah.
nowadays it's so huge because the people who don't give you that sense are people you're probably just gonna lose track of pretty quickly, I would
Yep.
say.
Yeah. It's it's so crazy how hard it is to keep up with people, even though
Yeah.
we're so connected.
Hmm.
And it,
Yeah. It's strange for me because I'm someone who, um, I I don't know. I've always viewed friendships as very loyal and deep connections. Like
mhm,
if I make a close friend, then they're going to be a close friend for a long time in my mind.
mhm,
Even if, I have a group of friends that, I've hardly ever seen or talked to in, I don't know, 5, 10 years, something like that.
mhm.
It's been 10 years since I graduated college, but uh, at the same time, you kind of know who those people are, that they're always going to be with you. But it's always weird when you go, I feel like I should be talking to them more. I feel like I should be making an effort to see them more. Why haven't we seen each
Yeah.
other? And yeah, nowadays it's just become infinitely harder to. I don't know if it's because you feel like you have too many connections, whereas
Yeah.
like back in the day, it felt like, okay, I have a few numbers in my phone list
Mhm.
that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna call you, or maybe when texting started, I might text you. But nowadays, it's like you see 200 people every time you get on social media,
Yeah.
and maybe it kind of lessens that desire in your mind to always reach out to those people that you should be close with. But it's really hard for sure.
I just thought about the contacts in my phone, and
Yeah.
I was like, why do I even have 90%
I'm
of
pretty sure I have all the same contacts in my phone that I've had since eighth grade when I got my
right,
first phone.
right? Like they just travel with you. And I've scrolled through and
Yeah,
like been like, all right, I'm gonna clean some of these up, and then I look at it and it's like, oh, I don't need to delete that number or that one, and then I like really think about it. It's like, when am I ever going to talk to this person again? And if I need
yeah,
to, I
no,
could
never.
probably message them on Instagram or something. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, no, you don't even need their phone number anymore.
right. So, man, some good thoughts. Good thoughts. I'm gonna be thinking about it, for the rest of the day. And like, how do we
I
fix it?
know.
Like, or are we moving in a direction that's okay? Like,
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of both in that it needs to be fixed, but we are moving in a direction that you probably can't stop. I don't know if I'd say it's okay.
yeah,
It probably going to have to accept it to some degree.
hmm,
Uh, but I would say that the part of it that does need to be fixed is in the sense of everybody desires community. Obviously,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of just
100%.
ingrained within us that we have this extreme desire for community, and whether that's romantically, friendship wise, in some sort of group or sports team or whatever it is. Uh, this idea that we can just go through life remaining connected only through a screen or through social media, it's going to affect you much more than you think it will.
Hmm.
And so that part I think needs to be fixed, just in terms of, if you don't have a community that you're consistently seeing, if you don't have people that you can talk to at any point or rely on to be there if you need them,
Hmm.
then that's something that it may not be the easiest thing in the world to fix, but I think that's something that needs to be worked on. Whether it's within you, of
Yeah.
like, I gotta just be more comfortable reaching out to people,
Hmm.
or I need to put myself in situations where people are more willing to reach out to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely harder. Yeah.
I think that's a good point. Like, I'm okay. I'm perfectly okay with only having a small circle of people that I
Yeah.
actually want to see and interact
Sure.
with, and maybe a couple small circles, because like I have a few friends that I hang out with from college, and or
Hmm.
whatever, and they've integrated into my life as me now. And then I have like
Yeah.
the group of guys that you're a part of, like that is a
Hmm.
separate group, but like you guys
Sure.
in that Bible study group have been super ingrained in my life for a long time and never will.
Long time.
And
Yeah.
we don't talk all the time. We try to. I mean,
Yeah.
we meet every week. Not everyone meets every week, but we meet on Tuesday nights, and
I've been a little absent lately.
me too. But like all of us are there. Like you can throw any message in there, and someone's gonna
Yeah.
respond. But then even
Hmm.
within that group, like you and Marcus are super close,
Yes.
and so like there's always like sub niches of people, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies depending on what your needs are, right?
right,
Like, how do you feel fulfilled within the community that you desire? Because it's not going to be, you know, I mentioned like the show Friends earlier. You're not going to necessarily have that group of 5 or 6 people that you're basically just like almost cohabitating with.
yeah,
Like we grew up on these shows where it's
right,
like Friends or How I Met Your Mother, or
yeah,
where it's like all these people who are supposed to be just together all the time and they're
yeah,
in every aspect of each other's lives. Um, and it's usually not like that. If you
right,
have that, then great. That's because your friends almost turn into family that way.
right,
But it's not normally going to be to that extreme degree.
hmm,
And so, what is it that you feel comfortable with, and what is it that you find you need? What level of connection are you okay with? Some people, I think you have to be honest with yourself in that too, because some people can lie to themselves and be like, I don't need that much. I'm okay being at home more. I'm okay not being around people. When in reality, they're probably suffering more than they realize. And so,
hmm,
there's a level of introspection I think that has to take place with that when it comes to community.
hmm,
Um, because the reality is, it's just harder. Like we've been
yeah,
talking about, it's harder to find community. And I think that effort draws a lot of people away from even engaging in that type of like, oh, let me put myself out there more
hmm,
because I could be rejected, or I may be uncomfortable because we don't fit. Like sometimes the first community you find yourself in isn't going to be the best one, right?
right,
It's almost like if you're trying a therapist out or something along those lines. I know a lot of people that have been in
yeah,
therapy for a long time, but they went through like 5 different therapists before because you can't. You're like, I was talking about my life to this person and we just didn't connect. It didn't make sense.
you
And I
know
feel like that's kind of how community is, you
that
know?
that's 100. And finding a church, that was the biggest thing when it came to finding a church
Yeah,
was
that's a
like,
huge one.
yeah. And I think I have been to therapy before when I was younger, and I've thought about going more recently. Just
Sure.
it's good. But
Yeah.
what you just described, I think, is actually what I fear most about with
Hmm.
therapy is finding the right person to talk to,
Oh, yeah.
because like that is such a you have to be in such a vulnerable place, and like to open yourself up to a stranger like that, and then
Yeah.
you do it once and it's just like, oh, we didn't click. And like that that's what scares me. I'm not scared about
Yeah.
talking, doing therapy. I think finding the process of getting there is the actual scary part.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's tough to be able to find someone that can speak to you on a level that uh, speaks to you,
Yeah.
that like isn't just because I don't. I've done therapy. Hope and I did couples therapy when we were engaged, just to
Hmm.
kind of prepare ourselves for marriage. And there were times where you go, I feel like I'm just complaining about things, and just kind of, and you're going, all right, I don't want to be in that mode where like I want somebody who's able to listen and then give me feedback that works that I can then work
Yeah.
on in my own life back home. And ironically, you made that connection. I think church is kind of the same way, where
Right.
you go, it's your pastor isn't your therapist, and that distinction should be made. But there is a level of openness you have to have. There's a level of vulnerability you have to have with
Hmm.
a church community, and you have to be able to trust them to lead you in a way that's going to then grow you
Yeah.
when you get out of that building. And so that becomes really tough, especially in today's world where whether it's the politicalization of the church,
Hmm.
whether it's the division in the church, um, there's certainly a lot of areas that have made it tougher to find a common ground and allow you to trust people and a staff enough to be like, I'm going to be in this community. I'm going to
Hmm.
invest my life in this
Hmm.
community. It used to be, I think that was a lot easier, you know, a decade or so ago, but I think now it's been uh, a much tougher journey for a lot of people, including Hope and I, to be able to be like, yeah, we can really find ourselves in a place where we completely give ourselves over to something.
Yeah. It's and that's a good point too. Like giving yourself over to something is a scary thing, especially in this world where we have so much information at our fingertips. So everyone thinks there's
Sure.
an expert
Yeah.
at everything, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of bad teaching out there when it comes
Yeah.
to everything.
Hmm.
medical advice, career advice,
Yeah.
churches,
Hmm.
school. It's everywhere, and so you have to really be on guard now, and it's 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 exhausting. Like,
It is, and I think you know the issue that I always battle with, and I talk to God about all the time. That I try to figure out is okay. Am I looking for kind of am I approaching the church like I approached trying to find a wife, like when you're in high school,
mhm,
where you're like looking for the perfect person,
right,
right? Something that fits you in every way. And I think sometimes you can get to that point with church community. And obviously, I have a little more unique perspective of being behind the scenes in
yeah,
ministry
right,
for a decade or so, and you know understanding maybe how things work. And I think sometimes that can give you some biases that are hard to overcome as well. But it definitely becomes a journey of okay, what is it that I need to be looking for, and
hmm,
what is it that I need to be willing to accept and be okay with? Where do I compromise versus where do I push further because that's not something that's going to help me grow. And that's a hard line to find, especially when you've got kind of your own prejudices and
hmm,
biases from past experiences.
yeah. That's with anything, with work,
Sure,
with people, and
true.
it's crazy. Like, and I'm trying to live a more open life, but I also am okay with only having probably 7 friends, like real friends,
Sure,
you know.
yeah.
But like when I'm out in the world, I want to be authentic and I want to be different, but like so like wave to people or smile, make eye contact,
Yeah.
like you know.
Hmm.
Um, so that's a
Yeah, I mean, I think you're gonna have more of an inner circle always,
right,
but we are conditioned to, like you said, always want more.
yeah,
And I think that's whether that's because of follower counts or
hmm,
views on a video you make or listens to a podcast,
right,
whatever it may be. Like there certainly is always this desire to have more community.
hmm,
When in reality, those people aren't community. That's just uh, people you're engaging with in
yeah,
some form or another.
right,
Like everybody I interact with on a plane. I mean, it might be 1,000 people in a day.
hmm,
Sometimes it's probably been more, and there's no way that you're actually making meaningful connection with all those people, but there is a level of, okay, how do I want to interact in the world around me,
yeah,
regardless of what kind of connection I'm making?
for sure. Have you ever made it like real connection with someone on a flight?
Um, yes, but not to where it's like followed up on.
Yeah, right.
Like connections in terms of there's been meaningful conversation,
Hmm,
connections in that, um, maybe we came from the same area or we did something similar or we had similar interests. There's
hmm,
always kind of, snippets of conversation that allow you to form, I don't know if it's superficial connections, but kind of baseline,
yeah,
connections with people. And it is weird at times when you talk to so many people and you're like, oh, that guy was cool. Or,
yeah,
we had a really good conversation over here. And then you just never see him again. But I
right.
think that's just kind of the way life is nowadays that social media, I don't know, maybe it almost makes being a flight attendant easier because you're just kind of used to those
Yeah,
baseline
sure.
connections where you're going, I know I'm not going to talk to this person much anymore, but it's easy to be congenial and have a good attitude around. And I think it just makes everybody's stressful day easier too when you're able to do those kinds of things. So
Definitely. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, I'm going to shift a little bit. We're coming up on 50 minutes, so we're
cool.
gonna. Are you still writing sports articles or any type of article?
I was last year.
Okay.
I was writing for Sports Illustrated's Clemson site.
Mm,
And so I was kind of doing all sports for them. Unfortunately, Sports Illustrated had a bunch of money issues and
yeah.
had to close down all of their kind of ancillary sites. I think the main body of Sports Illustrated is still a thing, but
Hmm.
a lot of their stuff had to be closed down. So that ended probably in January of this year, I
Mm,
guess.
hmm.
So I'm always looking for opportunities. I love writing still, and I love
Yeah.
I love doing stuff like this even more. Honestly, I love broadcasting, radio,
Mm.
that kind of stuff. So I'm always looking for those opportunities.
Yeah, I've been thinking about starting a blog in the similar aspect of like what I'm doing with the podcast singer stuff, and
Sure. Yeah.
just like documenting the journey of building a business or a brand or things like that. So I
Yeah.
was wondering if you would like if you'd started if you're still doing that, or if you're thought about ever starting a sports blog or something like that for yourself.
I have, and I think even in college or right out of college, I probably started my own blogs. I've written for a few different websites
Hmm.
over the past, 10 or so years, I guess. But um, it's always interesting starting something from scratch.
Right.
Not because I think you just have to be really patient with it and kind of understand from the beginning what your goal is. Because if you're starting a blog and going, okay, I really want this to turn into something big,
Yeah.
especially in today's internet where
Yeah.
writing isn't as popular as it used to be. Now it's stuff like this or video or
Yeah.
whatever it is. That makes it a little tougher to stay engaged and to stay motivated.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, if you're passionate about it and you just feel like these are things I really want to put out into the world, then a lot of times that's what's going to make it successful because it's
Right.
not dependent on the engagement you return back.
Yeah. What I actually, it's funny that you say, writing isn't as big. And I think that is true. But like, I think the real money actually seems to be in people who have like newsletters and things like that, people who are
Sure.
still writing or blogs or things like that. It takes a long time to get going. And I think that's with anything.
Yeah.
But we all struggle with instant gratification now. Um, so it's really tough. But yeah, I'm just trying to exploring all different types of avenues of things, and I don't know how great of a writer I am, but I can't get better if I don't start. So, and
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the thing I've learned, right? Is a lot of times with stuff like that, you just have to be willing to put yourself out there and
mhm,
understand that in the beginning, most things aren't going to get a whole lot of engagement or a whole lot of
right,
traction in terms of getting you to where you want to be. But even like this podcast, like you starting it
hmm,
is saying, okay, I know where I'm at. I know how many podcasts there are in the world,
hmm,
but I have a thing that I want to do, and I'm going to go and spend an hour talking to friends. And if that gets me somewhere, great. But if not, then it's something that I was able to put out in the
yeah,
world that I can feel proud of. That's how you mentioned writing. So I was a spoken word artist,
hmm,
that for a long time, and I put out a EP with like 6 tracks on it, probably in I guess that was 2016 or so, 2016,
hmm,
2017, and obviously like um, locally, I got engagement from that
hmm,
and was able to perform at different churches and some county events and things like that, radio events. But it was never something that I envisioned was going to like make me something kind of big.
yeah,
But it is something I can look back now and go, I'm really glad I did that, even though it cost money, even though it was a lot of time and effort, even though it didn't really get me any sort of cemented popularity. It's something that you go, okay, but I did something, and
right.
I think that's important for a lot of people to just do something and have, eh, you know, efforts be rewarded through just a product being finished.
For sure. Is that still on Spotify? That
I don't know. I can try to look.
I was looking up because I remember that, and I actually it was good.
It
I
was on Spotify. Yeah, I mean it was something that I was really proud of. I may have to I don't know, I may have not updated it in a while, so it may not be on Spotify right now. Um, I could probably get it back on there. I think it may have expired,
I found
probably.
a Ryan Aiken radio, and it's the logo that you of your
Oh,
EP,
really?
but not
But not the songs?
not a single one of them is in the playlist, which is so
Huh.
funny. uh,
I know they're still on YouTube.
okay,
Some of them, I think I can still find the tracks on YouTube because they got put into some like random channel that they never got taken off
yeah,
of.
I'm gonna
So I
link
can
that
probably,
in the podcast notes. So if anybody wants to check it out,
okay,
because
sure.
it's good, you should. Ryan is his spoken word was very, very good. You're a gifted poet, and you
Appreciate that.
performed well. So is that something you'd still be interested in, like doing?
Uh, Yeah, it would. It's funny. I think I've given a lot of thought to
Hmm.
why I haven't written as much. The last performance I kind of had actually was when I got engaged to Hope.
Mm,
I kind of did a mock performance and asked her to marry me at the end of it. But
yeah.
uh, before that, that was almost 3 years ago or so now. Um, and so I was performing fairly consistently before that.
Hmm.
But I think the process of getting married and kind of living more of a home life and us kind of starting everything we're doing, it takes a lot. Like poetry is a very angsty art form,
Yeah.
I guess,
Sure.
and there's a lot of like emotion that goes into that. And I think for me, when you're living by yourself and you're single and you're trying to figure out so much in life. Not that I figured everything out now, but I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into that art where you're just like, you kind of needed an outlet, and now
Yeah.
it's the emotions, along with just getting older. Probably the emotions probably aren't as heightened. It's
Yeah.
like when you see like I think Eminem just put out a his like final album
Yeah.
last week or something like that. I didn't even listen to it, to be honest. I think I just heard a few snippets of songs. But anytime a rapper gets to like 40 and
Yeah.
then they start putting out music, it's just like you don't have anything left. There's
Right.
no emotion that you're
Right.
coming. This
Right.
is strictly because you're putting out more
Right.
music. It's
Where's the
there's
heart?
very rarely artists. Yeah, exactly,
Hmm.
and that's why most major art forms are coming from teens, 20-year olds, maybe early 30s. But it,
Angsty
it's it,
teenagers.
yeah, right. The more I guess domesticated you get, the
Yeah.
harder it is to go
That's
back
funny.
and seem like not that I think I could still if I really felt passionate enough about certain topics. And there have been a few things I've
Hmm.
thought about writing about, over the last couple of years. But when it comes down to it, it's just, it's not the outlet for emotion that I need
Yeah.
right now.
That makes sense.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I loved it, and it was something that was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed being able to perform and hopefully give part of what God was telling me to people that heard that.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm proud of that time in my life, and I think not that I would consider it over. It's definitely just kind of going, all right, God, if you want me to write again, you'll give me the inspiration.
Yeah.
You'll allow me the platform or whatever it is to put me in that position. And I would still, if it was older stuff, I'd still perform again, potentially if that opportunity was given.
Hmm.
It just kind of depends on who and where it is.
That's fair.
So,
Very cool.
yeah.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate your time. You got anything like that you want to say to the world? I don't know how many people will listen to this. My last episode only has 5 listens to it, but maybe down the road
Fantastic.
someone clicks on this and they listen to the whole thing. What do you want to say to them? What do you think that they need to hear?
Oh man, that's such a heavy
I
ending.
know. I know. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
That's I know I wasn't prepared for I was gonna give a shout out to all the injuries the Braves have had. That was
Oh,
that's gonna
that's true.
it's gonna be I was gonna just talk about how upset I am about that.
That's fair.
Uh, I think the biggest thing I've noticed, I actually had a conversation with my dad. We were at the beach and everybody else had gone to bed a couple nights ago, right before we came home, and it was the same night that the Republican National Convention was going on, and
Hmm.
and so there was all these uh, takes on social media of where our country is and where we should be heading,
Hmm.
and not even from a United States standpoint, but I think from just a personal standpoint in your community, where you're at, who you're around. I think take a look at what you're investing your emotions in.
Yeah.
That's what I would say has been on my heart most lately. And I think it's become so easy for people to be angry about everything. I
Hmm.
think it's become really easy to be divisive and set yourself apart from people. And I think it's become really easy to uh, put yourself higher than others based off what you believe or what you have an opinion on. And I think there's too much anger right now
Yeah.
in what I'm seeing. And we were just talking about how uh, look for the leaders that aren't engaging in that activity,
Hmm.
and look for the leaders. They're harder to find, I think, nowadays, but look for the leaders and the people around you who are able to kind of parse through all the mess that's going on, whether it's politically, whether it's in the church, whether it's any avenue of your life that you're paying attention to,
Hmm.
and kind of come back to yourself and go, okay, who's leading me towards joy? Who's leading me towards love? Who's leading me towards togetherness?
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't mean you can't have an opinion on things. Doesn't mean you can't engage, but understand where you are and understand what the goal at the end of the day is. And
Mm.
that's what I would say to people. Just don't continue to engage in this anger cycle that we can find ourselves in.
Yeah. Wow. I put you on the spot, and that was a really good answer. So
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate you sharing your heart. That's good, and I appreciate your time, man. It was a fun conversation, and
Yeah.
as I run out of more guests because I'm getting to that point, I will ask if you want to come on again. So
Anytime, brother. We can talk for an hour anytime.
yeah, sounds good, man. Thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
Yeah, man. Always.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to follow on whatever platform you're listening on and send it to a friend. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. They really help boost my exposure. If you're on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed and liking every video. It really helps the algorithm. Links to all my and my guest socials, along with music credits, are in the show notes. Thanks so much. Love y'all. Bye.